In the last lecture module, we saw how the introduction of the concept of a personal equation, together with a set of instrumentation and operationalizations to measure this phenomenon, and a statistical tool for its analysis, are introduced in the early days of observational astronomy. In this module, we'll see how those ideas, those instruments, those operations are transferred by Hermann von Helmholtz into the study of nerve fibers and physiology. We'll then see how that work translates into the nebulous beginnings of psychophysics and ultimately into the study of the temporal evolution and sequencing of mental processes under Cornelius Dunders, all of which occurs before Sigmund Exner actually coins the term reaction time in 1873. Helmholtz, who is a student of the pioneering physiologist Johannes Peter Müller, uses the apparatus depicted here approximately to combine the use of a chronoscope together with a galvanometer in order to study the propagation of an electric shock through the hip plexus of a frog. He publishes his results in 1850 in two papers, On the Rate of Transmission of Nerve Impulse and Preliminary Report on the Reproductive Rate of Nerve Stimulation. In those papers, Helmholtz calculates the speed of nerve conduction, which previously was thought to occur at infinite velocities between 24.6 and 38.4 meters per second. He tells readers, "I have found that a measurable time passes when the stimulus exerted by a momentary electric current on the hip plexus of a frog propagates itself to the nerves of the thighs and enters into the calf muscle. In large frogs, whose nerves were 50 to 60 millimeters long, and which I had kept in 2 to 6 degrees Celsius, this length of time amounted to 0.0014 and 0.0020 of 1 second. Helmholtz also uses human subjects to measure simple reaction times, which he reports in a paper as to methods to measure the smallest part of time and their application to physiological purposes, also published in 1850. In this paper, Helmholtz described his methodology as well. In a human being, a very weak electric shock is applied to a limited space of the skin. When he feels the shock, he is asked to carry out a specific movement with the hand or the teeth, interrupting the time measurement as soon as possible. Together, the work of Müller, Helmholtz, and Émile Dubois-Reymond transformed the understanding of the functioning of nerve fibers. And in 1860, they inspired Gustav Fechner to expand physiology beyond the studies of the nervous sensory system function into psychophysics. He publishes his Elements de Psychophysique, or Elements of Psychophysics, in 1860, where he offers multiple formulations of the Weber-Fechner law. Now, this law is significant because it quantitatively relates changes in qualitative sensation to changes in intensity of physical stimulus. Historians usually cite the Dutch physiologist and ophthalmologist Francis Cornelius Dunders as the first researcher to use differences in human reaction time to infer differences in cognitive processing time. In 1868, Dunders publishes On the Speed of Mental Processes, in which he shows that simple reaction time is shorter than recognition reaction time and that choice reaction time is longest of all. Dunders' results are an instance of mental chronometry, that is the study of the relative speed and temporal sequencing of mental processes under some specified set of conditions. Now, in order to obtain his results, Dunders introduces the technique of subtraction. He uses a series of experiments to measure the reaction times for very simple mental tasks, and then uses those simple reaction times to determine the reaction times for complex tasks involving the simple ones. For instance, he subtracts the reaction time for a simple task like pressing a button in response to a stimulus from discrimination reaction time, the time to press the button in response to discriminating between several stimuli, to determine the required time for such discriminations. The ideas of subtraction, mental chronometry, and reaction time are now part of the central methodological framework of cognitive psychology. However, most historians credit the English scientist and polymath Sir Francis Galton with founding the contemporary field of differential psychology. Galton utilized a number of sensory motor tests to collect reaction times in order to determine the mean and range of reaction times for individual subjects of differing physical traits and behavioral capacities. The next method of operationalization, introspection, has a less venerable history.